The 10,000-year tranquility has concluded. Extraterrestrials initiate hostilities, yet humanity's sole response is amusement. The humans are expressing mirth towards us, Supreme Commander Zorak, relayed Lieutenant Vex, her violet complexion deepening to a more intense purple, reflecting her mortification. They are genuinely guffawing. Zorak's quadruple ocular organs flickered rapidly, a manifestation of profound unease within the Kian race. However, his superior limbs clutched the command seat with such force that the reinforced material started to deform. "Retransmit the communication," he commanded hoarsely. The primary display illuminated, presenting the visage of the human envoy, a female possessing reddish-brown hair cropped close to her cranium and eyes reminiscent of Earth's seas. Her designation was Admiral Tessa Monroe, Supreme Commander of Earth's Protective Forces. "Allow me to clarify," she stated, making no attempt to conceal the grin evident on her features. "You, the formidable Kian Empire, are initiating a conflict with humanity due to our denial of your soul mining privileges on an unpopulated celestial body at the periphery of our star system." Zorak's auxiliary cardiac organ commenced throbbing, the impudence, the discourtesy, the utter absence of apprehension. "We represent the Kian Empire," he had declared to her in the initial transmission. "We have subjugated 12 star clusters. Our battleships obscure stellar bodies. Our legions are counted in the trillions. The millennium-long peace accord, ratified by your forebears, has reached its termination, and we decline its continuation. Capitulate immediately or confront annihilation." And this human's reaction? Laughter, genuine laughter. "You comprehend that we have been observing your species for the preceding millennium, correct?" Admiral Monroe proceeded in the recording. "We have been tracking your transmissions, scrutinizing your technological advancements, and deconstructing your strategic approaches. The accord was not for our safeguarding. It was for yours." The command deck descended into silence. 50 of the Empire's most elevated officers fixated their gaze upon their supreme commander, anticipating his response. "She is feigning," murmured Science Officer Krell, her vocalizations scarcely perceptible. "They must be feigning." "Are they?" interrogated Zorak, addressing his intelligence chief, Lurar. "Elucidate this response. Why are they not displaying fear? Why are they not imploring for clemency? They constitute merely a solitary species restricted to a singular star system." Director Lurar advanced, his exoskeletal structure clicking with apprehension. "Supreme Commander, our intelligence regarding humans is constrained. The accord precluded direct surveillance. We are cognizant that they were rudimentary upon our initial encounter. They had only recently attained spacefaring capability. Their armaments were chemically based. Their medical practices still involved incising and suturing corporeal forms." "And currently?" demanded Zorak. "We lack certainty," conceded Lurar. "The accord mandated a 5-light-year separation from their system at all junctures. We have discerned unusual energy signatures over the centuries, yet nothing definitive. It is plausible they have progressed." Zorta emitted a snort. "In a mere 1,000 years? Implausible. No species evolves with such rapidity. It required 15 millennia for us to attain interstellar navigation." "With utmost deference, Commander," interjected Fleet Admiral Dex, "perhaps dispatching a reconnaissance vessel to evaluate their capabilities prior to initiating a full-scale incursion would be prudent." "Cowardice," retorted Zorak. "From my Fleet Admiral, no less. We are Kian. We do not reconnoiter, we do not evaluate, we subjugate." But Supreme Commander," persisted Dex, her facial appendages quivering with apprehension. "If there exists even a marginal probability the human speaks truthfully." "Enough!" bellowed Zorak, ascending to his full stature of 12 feet. "Prepare the armada, all vessels, all warriors. We shall eclipse their celestial bodies. We shall vaporize their oceans. We shall instill in these humans the comprehension of confronting the Kian Empire's dominance." As the bridge officers hastened to execute his directives, Zordak returned his attention to the display, scrutinizing the human's countenance. Admiral Monroe maintained her smirk. "One additional point," she conveyed in the recording just prior to severing the transmission. When you arrive, introduce something novel. We have been confined to this star system for a millennium, with only the anticipation of your return occupying our time. We are exceedingly eager to witness your advancements. The transmission concluded, and Zor that experienced a sensation unfamiliar for centuries. Was it uncertainty? He shook his substantial head, dispelling the intrusive notion. Director Lurar, what is the human military strength? Lurar consulted his datapad. Based on millennium-old intelligence, they possessed approximately 50 million combatants and 10,000 rudimentary spacecraft. And our forces? 10 trillion warriors throughout the Empire, with 500 million currently stationed on our capital vessels. The Armada comprises 100,000 battleships, each possessing the capacity to reduce a planet's surface to molten rock. Zorthak experienced a measure of relief. The numerical data was irrefutable. Even with advancements, they could not have amassed such military might. There is an additional factor, Supreme Commander, Lurar stated hesitantly, concerning the humans. Speak. In our preliminary evaluations, we discerned an atypical psychological characteristic. They react to menaces with heightened aggression rather than increased submission. Furthermore, they possess a peculiar relationship with their mortality. They acknowledge their inevitable demise, yet they conduct themselves as though immortal. It renders their conduct erratic. Zorak gestured dismissively. Psychological idiosyncrasies will not shield them from plasma weaponry. Set trajectory for the Sol system, maximum velocity. As the formidable Kian Armada initiated its movement, assembling into a destructive swarm spanning light years, Zor that could not dispel the recollection of the human's laughter. It was not the laughter of deception. It was the laughter of one possessing concealed knowledge. And for the initial instance in his 3-century existence, Supreme Commander Zorak experienced a frigid tremor traversing his spine. The voyage to Earth required 3 standard weeks, 3 weeks of readiness, 3 weeks of martial simulations, 3 weeks of Zorak's assurances to his commanders that this would constitute a swift and triumphant conquest, 3 weeks of endeavoring to obliterate the resonance of human mirth. We are nearing the Sol system's perimeter, Supreme Commander, declared Navigator Zell. Pluto's orbital trajectory in 5 minutes. Zorak inclined his head, his argent ceremonial armor reflecting the bridge's illumination. He had adorned himself for triumph today. Any indication of our detection? Communications Officer Trill verified her instruments. Negligible, Commander. No transmissions, no defensive preparations. Their system manifests complete openness. Hubris, scoffed Zorta, the most dependable precursor to defeat. As the Armada traversed the Sol system's boundary, every Kian on the bridge anticipated alarms, human defenses, any indication that would elucidate Admiral Monroe's perplexing assurance. Nothing transpired. Maintain approach, directed Zorak. Sustain battle configuration. The Kian battleships advanced deeper into the system, navigating past the ice giants, Neptune and Uranus uneventfully. Upon reaching Saturn, Zorak commenced to relax. Perhaps the humans truly were. The Krexian Armada's proximity bluffing. Perhaps they had simply succumbed to lunacy during their millennium of seclusion. Supreme Commander, Science Officer Kell interjected abruptly, I am detecting irregular readings emanating from Saturn's rings. Elaborate. The rings are exhibiting movement, she conveyed, bewilderment discernible in her vocalization. Segments of them are altering position contrary to orbital mechanics. Before Zorak could respond, the tactical display erupted with alerts. Saturn's rings were fragmenting, yet not haphazardly. They were reconfiguring, shifting, transmuting. It is not ice, whispered Krell. The rings. They are not composed of ice and rock. They are vessels, concluded Zorth, observing in consternation as millions, nay, billions of diminutive craft materialized from their impeccable concealment. They had masqueraded as constituents of Saturn's rings, indistinguishable from natural detritus until their mobilization. Incoming transmission, announced Trill, her voice tremulous. The view screen activated, revealing Admiral Monroe once more. She was positioned on what appeared to be a command deck, analogous to their own, yet more streamlined, more sophisticated. "Greetings to Sol, Commander Zorak," she conveyed jovially. "I observe you have brought the entire lineage. How considerate." Zorak endeavored to preserve his composure. "What is the significance of this subterfuge? Whence did these vessels originate?" "Subterfuge?" Monroe arched an eyebrow. "Oh, not subterfuge, merely preparedness. Regarding the vessels, we fabricated them, all 10 billion of them. We possessed ample leisure time, you understand, considering the peace accord and all." "Implausible!" roared Zortha. "No civilization could construct such a multitude of vessels." "Oh, that is correct. You continue to construct your vessels manually, do you not? How archaic." Monroe smiled. "We automated that procedure approximately 800 years ago. Currently, our fabricators can generate a fully operational warship every 1.3 seconds. Perform the calculation." Zorta addressed his tactical officer. "Weaponry status?" "All systems prepared, Supreme Commander. Target their fleet and commence firing." Monroe emitted a sigh on the screen. "Indeed? That constitutes your maneuver?" "Very well, then." The Kian Armada unleashed its ferocity. 100,000 capital ships firing concurrently at the swarm of human vessels. The void of space illuminated with energy armaments, a breathtaking exhibition of destructive potential that would have obliterated any conventional force. However, the human ships exhibited movement. They did not merely evade, they executed intricate maneuvers. They contorted and rotated with unattainable precision, some accelerating at velocities that should have rendered any organic pilot liquefied. "They are unmanned," realized Krell. "Those vessels are autonomous." "Accurate once more," stated Monroe, still observing with apparent amusement. "We designate them the Swarm, fully AI-controlled. They have been conducting combat simulations against Kian strategic approaches for approximately 900 years. They exhibit considerable proficiency. Not a singular human vessel had sustained damage. Not one. "Our turn," stated Monroe, her smile dissipating. "Merely a minor demonstration. A contingent of human ships, perhaps 1,000 out of the billions, disrupted formation and accelerated towards the Kian fleet. They were minuscule in comparison to the colossal Kian battleships, each no larger than a planetary transport. "Defensive shields at maximum capacity," ordered Zorak. The human vessels refrained from firing. Instead, they simply traversed the Kian defensive shields as though non-existent. Subsequently, they made contact with the hulls of 20 Kian ships and phased directly through the solid metal. Seconds later, those 20 Kian battleships simply disintegrated at the molecular level, dissolving into clouds of constituent atoms. The bridge of the Imperial flagship descended into silence. "These shift technology," elucidated Monroe casually, "permits our vessels to temporarily exist between states of matter. We elucidated it while investigating quantum mechanics. It is rather advantageous. It is challenging to defend against something that can simply disregard your defenses entirely." Zorak was speechless. This was not merely advanced technology, this was arcane sorcery, science that defied comprehension. "Therefore," proceeded Monroe, clapping her hands together, "here is my counter-proposal. You withdraw your fleet and return to your home world. You renew the accord, this time for 10 millennia, and we shall feign that this minor misapprehension never occurred." "And if we decline?" managed Zorak, his vocalization barely a whisper. Admiral Monroe's countenance assumed a serious demeanor for the initial instance. "Then we shall conclude our demonstration, and the Kian Empire will necessitate the selection of a new Supreme Commander and approximately 100,000 new battleships." Supreme Commander Zorak had never retreated in his entire 3-century military vocation. The concept was so alien to Kian doctrine that their lexicon lacked a suitable term for it. The closest equivalent was strategic repositioning for future conquest, a phrase so infrequently employed that most officers were unfamiliar with its existence. Yet here he was directing the most potent armada in the universe to withdraw from a solitary star system. "All vessels, reverse trajectory," he commanded, each syllable tasting acrid on his tongue. Sustained defensive configuration. No aggressive maneuvers. His bridge officers exchanged bewildered glances, but executed his directives without question. Even the most bellicose among them had witnessed the molecular disintegration of 20 Kian battleships. None desired to share that destiny. "The human vessels are maintaining position," reported Tactical Officer JX. "They are not pursuing." On the view screen, Admiral Monroe inclined her head approvingly. "Prudent decision, Commander. Your vessels are at liberty to depart unharmed." "This is not concluded," growled Zorak. "The Kian Empire does not capitulate." "Naturally not," concurred Monroe, with a trace of that infuriating smirk returning. "You are merely strategically repositioning for future conquest. We comprehend completely." Zorak's superior eyes narrowed. "You comprehend our language?" "We comprehend all 3,177 languages employed throughout the Kian Empire," she responded, "inclusive of the 22 classified military dialects. A linguistic analysis constituted one of our preliminary research priorities." "You have been conducting espionage against us," accused Zorak. "Despite the accord?" Admiral laughed again, that same assured laugh that had plagued him for weeks. "The accord precluded us from approaching within 5 light-years of Kian space. It stipulated nothing regarding remote surveillance." "Remote surveillance across millennia of light-years? Implausible." "Quantum entanglement communication," she elucidated, as though addressing a juvenile. "Instantaneous data transfer across limitless distances. We have possessed minuscule observation probes dispersed throughout your empire for approximately 950 years. They are approximately the size of a dust mote, so refrain from attempting to locate them." Zorak felt the mortifying withdrawal fury escalating, threatening to eclipse his rationality. "You dare to deride the most magnificent empire the universe has ever witnessed?" "Most magnificent?" Monroe inclined her head reflectively. "By what criterion? Territorial extent? Certainly, you surpass us there. We have remained within a singular star system. However, technological prowess, resource efficiency, scientific comprehension, medical advancements, I am apprehensive that you are lagging behind by several centuries." "You prevaricate?" roared Zorak. "No species progresses so swiftly." "Most do not," concurred Monroe, "but most species lack our specific amalgamation of abbreviated lifespans, intense inquisitiveness, and existential apprehension. We were cognizant that we might confront annihilation at any juncture. It is remarkable what humans can realize when adequately spurred." As the Kian fleet continued its mortifying withdrawal, Director Lermer approached Zorak's command chair and spoke in hushed tones. "Supreme Commander, I have been analyzing the human vessels. Their energy signatures are dissimilar to anything in our database, and their numbers, even with advanced automation, constructing billions of warships would necessitate resources exceeding what a singular star system should provide." "Your point, Director?" hissed Zorak. "I surmise they have mastered matter conversion at a fundamental level. They are generating ships from raw energy, perhaps even from vacuum fluctuations. The scientific ramifications are astounding." Zorak absorbed this information with escalating trepidation. If humans could generate matter from energy at will, their military potential was limitless. They could produce infinite armadas, infinite armaments, infinite soldiers. "Admiral Monroe," he stated, forcing civility into his vocalization, "prior to our departure, I must inquire, why did your ancestors ratify the accord in the initial instance? If not for safeguarding, then for what purpose?" R's expression softened marginally. "Honestly, pity." "Pity," reiterated Zorak incredulously. "Our initial contact specialists ascertained that your species represents a developmental cul-de-sac," she elucidated. "Your biological and cultural evolution has attained its zenith. Without external impetus, you will remain technologically stagnant for millennia. Our ancestors believed that granting you a millennium might assist you in progressing autonomously, catching up somewhat before we were compelled to interact as equals. Evidently, that was excessively optimistic." The bridge descended into silence once more, not the silence of astonishment this time, but the silence of collective mortification. Every officer, every warrior present felt the sting of her pronouncements because, deep within, they acknowledged their veracity. The Empire had not generated a noteworthy technological advancement in generations. Their conquests had invariably involved appropriating the innovations of others, not generating their own. "We shall return," vowed Zortha, desperation causing his vocalization to fracture. "We shall scrutinize, we shall progress, and we shall return." "I genuinely hope you do," stated Monroe, and, for the initial instance, there appeared to be genuine sincerity in her vocalization. The galaxy necessitates the Kexans to evolve beyond conquest. There exist menaces out there that mandate cooperation, not competition. Menaces that neither humans nor Kians can confront in isolation. Zorzi's quadruple eyes flickered in bewilderment. What menaces? In 12 galaxies, we have encountered no species more potent than ourselves. "Because they do not desire to be discovered," stated Monroe enigmatically. "Not yet. However, they are observing, just as we have been observing you." Before Zorak could demand clarification, the colossal human fleet commenced to mobilize, not towards the retreating Caixons, but into an intricate configuration that appeared to undulate through space itself. "What are they executing?" inquired Kay, frantically verifying her instruments. "I don't," commenced Lurar, then froze mid-sentence. "Supreme Commander, they are generating a gravitational anomaly, a colossal one." On the view screen, the billions of human ships commenced to rotate in flawless synchronization, generating an artificial gravity well of unattainable proportions. Space itself commenced to warp perceptibly. "This constitutes merely a minor demonstration of our capabilities," stated Monroe, "a minor token for your recollection." The swirling vortex of ships abruptly collapsed inward, and for a transient moment, it appeared as though a nascent star had been engendered. A blinding flash compelled the view screen to darken automatically. When the luminosity subsided, where billions of ships had been, now floated a flawlessly formed Saturn, rings and all, an exact replica of the gas giant, generated in mere minutes. "Did they simply fabricate a planet?" whispered Navigator Zell, her vocalization tinged with religious awe. "We shall be in communication, Commander Zorak," stated Monroe, her image commencing to fade, "when you are prepared for an authentic discourse regarding the future. Until then, I propose you utilize your time judiciously." As the transmission concluded and the Kian Armada limped away from the cell system, Zordat remained motionless in his command chair, fixated on the duplicate Saturn diminishing on the view screen. For the initial instance in his existence, he comprehended what it signified to be rudimentary. The return to Kia Prime required 3 months. 3 months of silence and ignominy. 3 months of Zortoth confined to his quarters, reviewing everything they comprehended regarding humans, searching desperately for some infirmity, some imperfection in their seemingly godlike capabilities. He discovered none. When the Armada ultimately reached the Kian homeworld, Zordok anticipated being stripped of his rank, potentially even executed for his failure. The Kian Empire did not condone defeat. However, to his astonishment, the High Council requested solely a private audience, shielded from the inquisitive gaze of the general populace. "Relate everything," commanded Arch-Councillor Vexar, the most ancient living Kian and nominal head of the Empire. "Omit nothing." Zorak recounted the entire mortifying encounter. The humans' laughter, the concealed fleet, the phase shift technology, the matter creation of the duplicate Saturn. With each revelation, the council members' expressions grew more somber. "And these humans assert there exist greater menaces than themselves?" inquired Councillor Dries when he had concluded. "Indeed, Councillor, though they furnished no specifics." "A feint, perhaps?" suggested Councillor Krell. "A tactic to preclude us from concentrating our endeavors on vanquishing them." Zorak shook his head. "I do not believe so. The human admiral possessed no rationale to fabricate such an assertion. They had already demonstrated their dominance." "Then what do you propose, Supreme Commander?" inquired Vexar, leaning forward. "What course of action serves the Empire most effectively in this unprecedented circumstance?" Zorak had expended 3 months contemplating this query. His response would determine not solely his destiny, but potentially the destiny of the entire Kian species. I propose we acquire knowledge, he stated simply. Acquire knowledge, reiterated Vexar. Elucidate. The humans were accurate regarding us, conceded Zorak, the pronouncements physically agonizing to articulate. We have become stagnant, self-satisfied. For 10 millennia, we have conquered rather than generated appropriated technology rather than developing our own. It has rendered us susceptible. Murmurs of indignation rippled through the council chamber, but Vexar raised a gnarled hand for silence. A novel genesis for the galaxy. Continue. I propose a fundamental restructuring of imperial priorities, stated Zorak. Less emphasis on military expansion, more on scientific progression. We must bridge the technological chasm between ourselves and the humans. You propose we forsake conquest? Growled Councillor Traz. The very cornerstone of our society? Not forsake, clarified Zorak. Postpone. For a century, perhaps 2. Dedicate those resources to investigation and development instead. And what of the humans in the interim? Inquired Vexma. What if they elect to depart their star system, to conquer as we have conquered? They will not, stated Zorak with conviction. If conquest were their aspiration, they would have commenced a millennium ago. They possess a distinct species of power, one we do not yet comprehend. The council chambers descended into silence as the assembled leaders contemplated his pronouncements, and ultimately Vexar spoke. There exists sagacity in your proposal, Supreme Commander, wisdom, nonetheless. The ancient Kian's quadruple eyes fixated on Zorak. But such a fundamental shift will encounter opposition. Many will designate it cowardice. Let them, stated Zorak resolutely. I have witnessed what awaits us if we persist on our current trajectory. The conflict we cannot triumph over, extinction perhaps. I would rather endure accusations of cowardice than guide our species to annihilation. Vexar inclined his head slowly. Very well. We shall subject it to a vote. However, initially there exists one additional matter to address. He gestured to a guard who activated a communication panel. Introduce the visitor. The chamber doors slid open, and to Zorak's astonishment, a human entered. Not Admiral Monroe, but a male, tall and slender, with dark complexion and closely cropped hair. He wore no military attire, solely unadorned garments in earth hues. This is Dr. Jackson Webb, introduced Vexar. He arrived yesterday, unaccompanied, in a vessel no larger than a personal transport. How did he attain Kia Prime? Your defenses are quite impressive, interrupted Dr. Webb affably. I particularly appreciated the autonomous minds in the Cygnus approach. Highly inventive. Supreme Commander Zorak, I presume? Continued Webb, advancing with an extended hand. After a moment of bewilderment, Zorak reluctantly extended his own appendage, and the human clasped it fleetingly. Admiral Monroe conveys her salutations. Why are you present, human? Growled Zorak. To proffer assistance, replied Webb simply, and to deliver this. He handed Zorthak a diminutive device no larger than a Kian data crystal. It pulsated with a gentle blue luminosity. What is it? The comprehensive scientific and technological chronicle of humanity, stated Webb. Every discovery, every innovation, every theoretical framework, from the wheel to phase shift technology. Everything, excluding weaponry, naturally. Those you will be required to elucidate yourselves should you be so disposed. Zorak fixated on the minuscule device in disbelief. Why would you bestow this upon us? Webb smiled, and Zorak was struck by its resemblance to Monroe's expression, not quite a smirk, but proximate, the smile of a species utterly self-assured in its position. Because evolution necessitates competition, elucidated Webb. For the preceding millennium, humans have possessed none. We have progressed rapidly, yes, but without external pressure, without diverse perspectives, we have become inbred, intellectually speaking. You desire us as competitors? Inquired Zorak skeptically. We desire you as collaborators, corrected Webb, associates in the grander endeavor of galactic civilization. The menaces Admiral Monroe referenced, they are genuine, and they will necessitate more than solely human ingenuity to surmount. Vexar leaned forward once more. What menaces precisely? Webb's expression assumed a somber demeanor. There exist spaces between galaxies where luminosity behaves anomalously, regions where the fundamental principles of physics fluctuate. We have been investigating them for centuries. Something is approaching, something ancient, something that perceives both our species as nothing more than transient microorganisms on a cosmic petri dish. And you surmise the Kian Empire would aid humanity against such a menace? Inquired Counselor Dries incredulously, following your humiliation of our fleet. I surmise you will aid yourselves, replied Webb. Self-preservation constitutes a potent motivator, common to both our species. And I surmise that, given time and this, he inclined his head toward the device in Zorx's hand, you might genuinely become the allies we necessitate. Zorak gazed down at the minuscule crystal, encompassing millennia of human knowledge. It would alter everything, the equilibrium of power within the Empire, social hierarchies, economic frameworks, their entire mode of existence. It would also preserve them from obsolescence. We accept your offering, Dr. Webb, stated Zorak ultimately, and your challenge. Webb inclined his head, seemingly gratified. Excellent. In that instance, I am authorized to propose a novel accord, not one of segregation this time, but of restricted collaboration, scientific interchange, cultural dialogue, preparation for what is approaching. And military matters? Asked Zort that cautiously. Webb's expression assumed a serious demeanor once more. Let us simply state that how expeditiously we share our defensive technologies will depend entirely on how expeditiously you relinquish your offensive aspirations. The implication was unambiguous. The humans were proffering a path forward, but not unconditional trust. That would be required to be earned. As the Council deliberated the stipulations of this unprecedented accord, Zorak discovered himself scrutinizing the human, not with animosity or resentment now, but with inquisitiveness. How had they progressed so swiftly? What impelled them to explore rather than subjugate? What could the mighty Kian Empire glean from a species confined to a singular star system? And most perplexing of all, why did they persist in laughing in the face of menaces? Even now, as Webb met his gaze, there was that same trace of amusement, that same inexplicable assurance. Perhaps, Zordak reflected, that would constitute the initial enigma they would resolve. The peculiar psychology of a species that responded to declarations of conflict not with apprehension, not with fury, but with laughter. Me, for the initial instance since his mortifying retreat from Earth, Zor that experienced something novel stirring within him. Not a thirst for retribution, not ignominy, but something he hadn't experienced since his youth, when he'd initially gazed up at the stars and pondered what lay beyond. Inquisitiveness. And as Dr. Webb commenced elucidating his proposal for collaborative research initiatives, Zordak discovered himself, against all probabilities, anticipating the future. A future where perhaps the Kian Empire might evolve into something exceeding conquerors, something meriting standing alongside humanity when the genuine conflict commenced.